In 2008, Colorado voted on personhood. Colorado residents were asked that year if they would like to ban all abortions, as well as the most popular forms of birth control, as well as in vitro fertilization, and maybe also to criminalize some women's miscarriages. Colorado voters said no to that by a 3-to-1 margin. The effort to criminalize abortion and birth control and IVF by means of declaring a fertilized egg to be a personhood just got crushed in Colorado in 2008. Then the personhood folks gave it another shot 2 years later in 2010. How's about it, Colorado? No. When given a second chance at personhood for fertilized eggs, Colorado said no again by a huge margin, by more than 40 points. But they are doing it again. The anti-abortion, anti-birth control personhood folks have already turned in enough signatures to get the personhood amendment back on the Colorado ballot this fall. Again. Which obviously is good news for Democrats running for office in Colorado this year. I mean, think about it. If you're a Colorado Democrat and you're worried that the presidential race or maybe your race won't be enough to get your voters to come out to polls, how about the prospect of banning birth control? You think that might motivate some folks who would otherwise not bother to turn out? Because they can read polls too. Colorado Republicans this time, even the super conservative, super anti-abortion Colorado Republicans are sprinting away from this year's personhood thing as fast as they can. A spokesman for Republican Congressman Mike Kaufman tells the Colorado Statesman the congressman doesn't take positions on any state and local ballot initiatives. Same goes for Republican Congressman Cory Gardner's office. Quote, as a federal legislator, Cory will not be taking positions on state initiatives. Even Republican congressional candidate Joe Coors says he's refusing to endorse Personhood 3.0 in Colorado. The same Joe Coors donated $1,000 to the Personhood campaign just 2 years ago. But this year, as a candidate, person what? Person who? Leave me out of it. Another one of these personhood measures was on the ballot in Mississippi last fall. If it can pass anywhere, right? In October of last year, Mike Huckabee was one of the political celebrities working to try to pass personhood in Mississippi, to try to criminalize abortion and hormonal birth control. In that capacity on his Fox News TV show, Mike Huckabee asked Mitt Romney if he would have supported personhood in Massachusetts.
Would you have supported the constitutional amendment that would have established the definition of life at conception?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That was Mitt Romney, October of last year, signing on to a policy that would ban all abortions with no exceptions for rape or incest. It would ban most forms of birth control. It would likely ban in vitro fertilization. That's what Mitt Romney said he would absolutely support as of October of last year. But in Mississippi, a totally grassroots opposition movement grew up around this issue. Personhood opponents held a Save the Pill rally in Oxford, Mississippi in October. Billboards like these ones went up around the state. Vote no to personhood for eggs. And Amendment 26 makes birth control a lethal weapon. And with that, Mississippi said no to personhood by a big double-digit margin. That's Mississippi. The thing Mitt Romney said he would absolutely support was so extreme that not even the uber-conservative electorate of the great state of Mississippi wanted anything to do with it. The Romney campaign has been trying to run away from that position Mr. Romney took pretty much ever since he took it. When the Obama campaign started running ads last month attacking Mr. Romney for holding exactly that position, for advocating a ban on all abortion with no exceptions, the Romney campaign pushback was immediate. They called the ads viciously negative and false. In order to prove it was false, they pointed to another time last summer when Mitt Romney said something different about his position on abortion. The Romney campaign did not want Mr. Romney to be seen as the guy who wants to ban all abortion with no exceptions, even though he has said he would like to do that. And it's empirically proven to be a massively unpopular position, even in the reddest of red states. And that is one of the reasons why Paul Ryan is such a baffling choice for the Romney ticket. Congressman Paul Ryan, now presumptive vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan, co-sponsored a bill in the House that is a federal version of the Personhood Amendment, the abortion and hormonal birth control ban, the same one that even Mississippi voters rejected last fall. How'd you like it for the whole country? The national personhood bill that Paul Ryan co-sponsored declares that, quote, the life of each human being begins with fertilization, cloning, or its functional equivalent, at which time every human being shall have all the legal and constitutional attributes and privileges of personhood. And they get really specific about when precisely an egg becomes a person. Quote, the term fertilization means the process of a human spermatozoan penetrating the cell membrane of a human oocyte to create a human zygote, a one-celled human embryo, which is a new, unique human being. That's Paul Ryan. That's Paul Ryan's bill. That's who Mitt Romney put on the ticket. Things did not work out well for Republicans when they tried to campaign against health insurance covering birth control earlier this year. After a lot of bluster over it and a failed vote in the Senate, the House Republican leadership just tried very quietly to walk away from the issue. Well, if you like how it went when Republicans invade against insurance coverage for birth control this year, how do you think it's going to go now that a federal ban on the most popular forms of birth control has just been put on the Republican presidential ticket? Are Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan both going to campaign on Paul Ryan's proposed national ban on most in vitro fertilization and the most popular forms of birth control in the country? When they announced the vice presidential pick, it was sort of surreal to see Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell there, right, introducing Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. The whole thing was staged in front of a decommissioned battleship in Virginia. I mean, there's Bob McDonnell, who hails from a true swing state, who has real executive experience, who actually served in the military, which makes it not embarrassing for him to be using that battleship as a political prop. Why couldn't Mitt Romney have picked him? Well, of course, Mitt Romney couldn't pick him because Bob McDonnell blew his vice presidential chances when he became Governor Ultrasound, right? Forcing medically unnecessary ultrasounds on Virginia women and forcing them to pay for it. Yes, Bob McDonnell blew it. And so Mitt Romney went instead with the Republican budget wonk guy, right? With none of that baggage. Except, of course, Paul Ryan is not just the Republican budget want guy. In addition to his sponsoring the ban on all abortion and the most popular forms of birth control and most in vitro fertilization for the whole country in Congress this session, Congressman Ryan has also supported a federal version of Bob McDonnell's Virginia forced ultrasound bill. He sponsored a federal bill to force women seeking an abortion to undergo a medical procedure regardless of whether or not they want it, regardless of whether or not their doctor thinks it's the right decision, but just because the government says you have to. The latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll has Mitt Romney losing women to President Obama by 15 points. So I guess now is as good a time as any to welcome Congressman Ultrasound to the Republican ticket.